Hari Om. Welcome to the English class under the Bodhi tree, the abode of knowledge. The Snake and the Mirror by Vaikom Mohammad Basheer, translated by V. Abdullah. In our previous parts of discussion of this chapter, we learnt that this is a story of a homeopathic doctor who narrates his encounter with a snake one night and how he got saved by a mirror. In part 2, we found that unable to sleep as the doctor was trying to while away his time, sitting on his table right in front of the mirror trying to read a book, he soon lost himself in admiring his own beauty, in thoughts of how to groom himself much better so that he can look more handsome and smart. After all, he was a doctor and a bachelor and wanted to make his presence felt. Soon after that, he got an idea of marrying a fat, rich lady doctor for valid reasons. Just then, he heard a loud noise again, and before he could even turn around and look and react, he found himself wriggled by a large cobra with its hood open just 3 to 4 inches away from his face. Now, let us see what has happened further. In part 3, the doctor explains in the following way. It would not be correct to say merely that I sat there holding my breath. I was turned to stone. But my mind was very active. The door opened into darkness. In the light of the lamp, I sat there like a stone image in the flesh. In this passage, the doctor says that as soon as the snake wriggled his arm tightly and stood in front of his face, he was not only holding his breath, but had turned into a stone, which means he became stiff and still like a stone or a statue. Although physically he was still like a statue, but his mind was very active and he was thinking what he should do next. Let us see what happened in the next passage. I felt then the great presence of the Creator of this world and this universe. God was there. Suppose I said something and he did not like it. I tried in my imagination to write in bright letters outside my little heart the words, "Oh God." So children, in this passage, we hear that as he was struggling to think what he can do, then he realized his mistake of losing himself in self-admiration without realizing the presence of the God. Then he thought maybe he did some mistake, and if he apologizes and finds the presence of the God by screaming to him, "Oh God," he will find some way. Coming over to the next passage. There was some pain in my left arm. It was as if a thick leaden rod, no, a rod made of molten fire, was slowly but powerfully crushing my arm. The arm beginning to be drained of all strength. What could I do? At my slightest movement, the snake would strike me. Death lurked 4 inches away. In this passage, we find his arm was paining with the coiling of the snake. It was burning. He was sweating out of fear, unable to breathe. He felt as if he ran out of his strength, and even the slightest movement, the snake can strike him and he can be next at the door of death. Coming over to the next passage. Suppose it struck. What was the medicine I had to take? There were no medicines in the room, but I was a poor, foolish, and stupid doctor. I forgot my danger and smiled feebly at myself. It seemed as if God appreciated that. The snake turned its head. It looked into the mirror and saw its own reflection. In this passage, we find, as he was in trouble, he started feeling the presence of God and started thinking of God, and just then he decided not to speak lest he should anger the snake. In his heart, the doctor was praying to God to save his life. As the snake has coiled itself, it had wrapped itself around him, he was experiencing a lot of pain and was not able to do anything to save himself. Just then, as these thoughts were running in his mind, and he was sitting at a distance of 4 to 5 inches away from death, he thought, if the snake bit him, what would he do? Which medicine to take? And then he realized that he had no medicine, as he was a poor, foolish, and a stupid doctor. He was feeling very weak, and he did not have any way to come out of this situation. He started smiling to himself at his foolishness. As the doctor felt that the God appreciated the doctor's realization of his mistake, something unimaginable, something favorable happened. And what was it? The snake moved its head to the other side all of a sudden and saw the mirror. It looked at the mirror and saw its own reflection. For a second, the doctor felt all the darkness that was there in the room, in his life, slowly turned to light, and he felt the presence of God. Coming over to the next passage. I can't claim that it was the first snake that had ever looked into the mirror, but it was certain that the snake was looking into the mirror. Was it admiring its own beauty? Was it trying to make an important decision about growing a mustache, or using eyeshadow, or mascara, or wearing a vermilion spot on its forehead? In this third passage, the doctor explains that it is not possible that any snake had never looked at itself in the mirror before. He cannot claim, means he cannot say, state, or assert that any snake would have never looked into the mirror. But yes, this snake was looking at itself in the mirror, and the doctor was surprised because the snake was looking at itself in the mirror very carefully with complete focus turned over the mirror from the doctor. This brings us to the end of page 3. As you can see in this picture, all of a sudden, the snake turned its head towards the mirror and started moving towards the mirror to observe itself carefully, as if it got attracted to its own reflection. Coming over to the word meanings, which we discussed in this passage. Strike means attack. Lurked means hid. Feebly meaning weakly. Drained means ran out. Appreciate, which means to understand fully. Admire means look at pleasure. Vermilion spot meaning a red bindi, which is normally worn by the women in our Indian culture. Claim meaning to state or assert something. This brings us to the end of part 3. Let us continue the rest of the story in part 4. Thank you.